Nintendo's phenomenally successful 8th generation console, the Switch, released way back on March 3rd, 2017, which astonishingly means that this handheld slash home console hybrid has been dominating the market for a whopping 6 years. With two major revisions under its belt, the Switch Lite and the Switch OLED, and the internet finally coming to terms with the fact that there will be no Switch Pro, it is clear that the Big N is on the cusp of releasing follow-up hardware to their insanely successful current-gen technology, which is, at the time of this writing, the second best-selling home console of all time. With an install base of over 122 million consumers, it's no surprise that the Switch has amassed a rather impressive library of phenomenal games, all competing for players' attention. Most of us are perfectly familiar with this visual aid Nintendo presented to us a while back, trying to assuage all 14 Wii U owners, myself included, who were hesitant to invest in another piece of hardware that inexcusably tied digital purchases to the actual console itself instead of to an account. So we are at least fairly confident that our eShop games will hopefully stick around as we move into the future. And while it would make sense for most of the Switch's catalog to be backwards compatible with whatever is next, this is Nintendo we're talking about, so it's quite difficult to say what the future holds. So, whether you jumped into the world of the Switch in 2017 at the time of its release, are a late adapter looking to catch up on games you may have missed, or are watching this in the future when Nintendo's next generation console hits the market and, inevitably, is immediately vacuumed up by online bots and resold at astronomically high prices by butt-munching scalpers and made impossible to purchase at retail value, this video series will help you to identify the games that absolutely warrant your time and hard-earned dollars, or cheddar, or bacon, or bread, or dough, or cabbage, or clams, or Gouda. Speaking of scalpers, those turd birds made sure that every store, be it brick and mortar or online, sold out of 2023's Metroid Prime Remastered's physical release within mere moments. Living in the modern era, we are at least afforded the assurance of knowing that the game exists in a digital option, even if collectors such as myself will have to pay a tad more than the game's $40 MSRP. This is a phenomenal remake of a GameCube game that achieved a legendary level of universal acclaim, placing it firmly on the list of best games of all time, alongside the likes of Ocarina of Time and Perfect Dark from the Nintendo 64, and cementing it as the highest aggregated GameCube game to ever be released, easily outranking Super Mario Sunshine, Super Smash Bros. Melee, and even topping both of the GameCube Zelda games. Everything about the game makes it deserving of your time. The attention to detail, world building, beautiful visuals, ambient sound design, and its unique ability to make you feel truly alone on an alien planet all come together to create a unique experience that every gamer should experience. Astral Chain is an action-adventure game released in August of 2019 to critical acclaim, though I didn't manage to get around to picking it up until several months later when the world was in the throes of the COVID-19 pandemic. And when I did get the game, I was too enthralled with Animal Crossing New Horizons to really give it much of my time. Truth be told, it was late 2022 when I finally decided to actually sit down with Astral Chain and dedicate some real playtime to it. Over 3 years after its initial release, I was finally able to discover how satisfying its nuanced gameplay and gripping story really were. I'm not quite sure what it was that kept me from diving fully into this action-packed behemoth from Platinum Games, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who failed to see all that it had to offer, which is why it deserves a spot on this list. The sci-fi plot, gripping sequences, and over-the-top action all weave together effortlessly to produce a massively satisfying, uniquely individual game that is nearly impossible to put down, even if the game's opening hours are a bit convoluted and admittedly drab. Okay, hear me out on this one. Resident Evil Revelations may not be the prettiest Resident Evil game this generation, and is in fact one of the uglier ones on the Switch, and yes, I am aware that the game originally released as a 3DS exclusive back in 2012. But the fact remains that Revelations is an essential installment in a storied franchise. At the time of the game's original release, gamers were anxiously awaiting the sixth numbered entry in the Resident Evil franchise, which would go down as the series' worst received mainline installment. Prior to this, Resident Evil 5 left gamers wondering whether Capcom had completely lost their touch when it came to their once unrivaled ability to create terrifying and engrossing gameplay experiences. It may not be the prettiest Resident Evil game of this past generation, nor is it the scarier or most engaging. What it is, however, is an essential game for any Resident Evil fan to experience even 11 years following its initial release. And while this game can be enjoyed on several other consoles, the Switch is the only one that's perfectly capable of capturing that handheld horror magic we saw over a decade ago on the 3DS. That's it for our first entry in a series meant to make sure you don't miss out on any essential Nintendo Switch titles before Nintendo releases their inevitable next generation hardware. Whether you're brand new to the console or are just looking for ways to spend your final days with our aging friend before she fades away, we hope you've enjoyed this video and look forward to the next one.